She walks into the courtroom with a faint smile, as if she's arriving for a rehearsal, not a felony hearing. Look at her body language. Shoulders relaxed, back straight, no tears. This is Nicole Callaham. To the community, she was a beloved drama teacher, a mentor, and a mother. She looks at the judge directly, without tension in her eyes. Her gaze does not wander around the room. She does not shift in her seat or tighten her hands. There are none of the small movements that often appear in people waiting for bad news. She listens, but not like someone bracing for a surprise. Her defense team is beside her, people who know when to speak and how to frame their words. The arguments are prepared, the strategy has been rehearsed, the image is fully assembled and consistently presented. A teacher, a mother, a woman with no criminal record, someone who cooperated with investigators, someone who does not pose a threat and has no reason to flee. Guys, I just want to make videos you'll crave more of. Subscribe if it hits, or tell me how to level up. Let's continue. This is how the case is first presented to the public. Not as a simple story, but as one balanced between two opposing labels. The boy was 14 when it began. She was not his classroom teacher. She did not teach him required subjects or assign grades. She did not control his academic performance. But she was present in another role, a mentor, a theater director, an adult with access, authority, and trust. That distinction matters. The absence of a formal classroom role created an illusion of safety. She was not sitting beside him every day in a classroom. Her presence felt informal and therefore less threatening. She entered his life through extracurricular activities, through rehearsals, through performances, through trips, through constant availability and help. To his parents, it looked like support, like good fortune, like an example of a responsible adult who genuinely cared about their child's development. According to investigators, this is how the first stage forms a stage without clear warning signs, where trust does not feel dangerous. That is the scary part. The devil doesn't come in a red cape, folks. She comes with a smile and offers to help. That is how they get in. During the hearing, the defense introduces a detail meant to shift perception. She is pregnant. She is 8 to 9 weeks pregnant, has a 5-year-old daughter named Lizzie, and is engaged to Brandon Dixon. The information is presented as if it should redirect attention, as if it adds vulnerability in the eyes of the court. That makes me sick.
And that I think more awareness needs to be brought to things like this, and just because I'm a man doesn't mean that it should be shunned away. I wasn't a man.
This is not an emotional outburst. It is a deliberate decision to speak. He is not trying to convince anyone. He explains why silence is no longer an option. Think about what you were doing at 14. You were playing video games. They sound like an attempt to document reality. She resigned from her teaching position on May 21, 2025, the day before the police report was filed. On May 22, 2025, police in Greenville receive information from investigators in Anderson County. An 18-year-old young man files a report.
You had a chance to talk to him this morning, did you?
I did, yes, sir, I have. Yes, sir.
Come around, Ms. Callaham, and you'll be right there with Mr. Epps. You understand the punishments for these cases, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you've had a chance to talk to Mr. Epps about these cases. All right, well, this purpose of you being brought here this morning is for me to set bond on each of these cases. And in order to do that, I'm going to hear a little bit from the detective that handled the case, Mr. Bowles. Detective Bowles, tell me a little bit about this factual situation, please.
Yes, Your Honor. On May 22nd, 2025, the Greenville Police Department received a report from investigators from the Anderson.
Between those points are 2 years of silence. 2 years of trying to understand what had happened. This was not a report filed immediately after contact ended. It was not impulsive. It was a decision reached gradually. Inside the courtroom, the charges are read aloud. The language is dry, legal, stripped of emotion. It sounds procedural, almost mechanical. But behind each count are years of interaction now examined through criminal law. Investigators talk about grooming, about gradual dependency, about manipulation that did not appear sudden or obvious. Nicole Callaham. Her full legal name is Nicole Callaham, reflecting her maiden name Ballou before marriage. An elementary school teacher, a theater director, a woman who spent years working with children and teenagers, known as a responsible educator. According to prosecutors, that reputation was central to this case. She did not appear dangerous. She did not trigger alarm. She seemed familiar, safe, predictable, someone people trusted without hesitation. Nicole Callaham began working in Anderson County in 2017. She worked as a kindergarten teacher at Homeland Park Primary School in Anderson School District 5. She was involved in theater programs with children of different ages. In addition to her teaching role, she served as the director of musical theater operations at the Project Challenge Playhouse, where she met the boy through his interest in fine arts and theater. Programs viewed as creative, beneficial, and safe. That is where she was introduced to the boy's family. To the parents, the connection did not raise concern. It felt logical, even positive. Their son was shy. He struggled with confidence. Theater became a place where he could open up. The boy was an aspiring actor with a love for fine arts and theater, dreaming of landing a lead role in a play, and she was the adult who noticed him. He called her by the nickname Nikki, viewing her as a best friend and mentor. Call me old-fashioned, but a teacher wanting to be a teenage boy's best friend? That is the biggest red flag I have ever heard. Adults have adult friends. At first, everything appeared harmless. After school rehearsals, advice about roles, encouragement, praise for effort. She gave him more attention, highlighted his potential, supported him when he doubted himself. For a teenager, that attention mattered. For parents, it did not seem alarming. According to investigators, this is how grooming begins. Not with boundary violations, not with obvious danger, but with small gestures that slowly reshape what feels acceptable and create a sense of special connection. There are situations where she picks him up from school or offers rides after activities, explaining it as preparation or rehearsals. To the parents, it looks like help, like convenience, like care. But investigators later say this is where control takes shape, when an adult begins to manage a child's time, when they become a constant presence, when assistance stops being occasional and becomes dependency. The contact that initially looked like support begins to shift, not suddenly, not dramatically, without a clear line that can be marked on a calendar. That gradual change is what makes it dangerous. Slow changes rarely trigger immediate alarm. For the boy, her presence becomes normal. She is there during rehearsals. She helps with preparation. She asks about his thoughts, his feelings, his doubts. She listens. For a teenager seeking acceptance, that matters. For an adult, it creates power. Investigators later determined that this is where a second level of interaction forms. She is no longer just present within defined boundaries. She creates a separate space for communication, a space without witnesses, a space where she sets the rules. Messages appear. At first, they seem harmless. Discussions about rehearsals, planning, encouragement, inside jokes. Over time, they become frequent. They extend beyond activities. And most importantly, they create a sense of a private bond, separate from family and other adults.
Aware of the time factor involved between these cases that were committed there in Anderson and the ones that began to be committed in the city of Greenville.
It's been about
Did Anderson predate that by some time?
There is some.
And that was pretty much exclusively where he was.
Yes, Your Honor.
He lived on campus.
Part-time, and then he would go back home
Okay.
to Anderson. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so very good. I understand a little bit more about it. Mr. Epps, anything you'd like to tell me about this?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. May it please the court, William Norman Epps III. I represent the defendant, Nicole Callaham. Your Honor, respectfully, we ask the court to set a reasonable bond. This is pursuant to our state constitution, Article 1, Section 15. Also, our statutory code 1715-10, as well as statutory code 225510. Your Honor, we ask the court to set a reasonable bond. Again, she was in front of Anderson County Magistrate Court for a bond hearing last Thursday, July the 10th. She was granted a surety bond on each and every one of her charges that are pending. These charges overlap, and obviously, Your Honor, you know that Ms. Ballou she's got a presumption of innocence, which is applicable to all criminal defendants prior to conviction. Your Honor, she's 33 years old. She's not charged with any capital crime. Other than the pending matters, the defendant Ms. Callaham has no criminal background. I will also let Your Honor know that Ms. Callaham is 8 to 9 weeks pregnant with a prenatal appointment with her OBGYN on July the 15th, 2025 at 10:50 a.m. She has not had any prenatal care. Again, she cooperated with Anderson County. She cooperated with law enforcement. She turned herself in last Thursday, July the 10th. Since that time, Your Honor, she's had really no prenatal vitamins or prenatal care. She's dizzy now, so I have a chair here for her right now. Ms. Callaham and her family are citizens and residents of Anderson County. They've been members of that community all of Ms. Callaham's life. Ms. Callaham's mother, Rhonda, is here. Her sister, Erica, is here. Her fiance, Brandon Dixon, is here. Mr. Dixon does reside in Greenville County. Your Honor, she has a 5-year-old daughter, Livy. She's a great mother. I will tell you that Ms. Callaham taught at Homeland Park Elementary for 8 years, I believe, beginning in 25. Her teaching requirements because she loved helping these students. At Homeland Park Elementary, a lot of those students were low-income minorities and special needs children. During that time, Your Honor, her students' test scores were among the highest as a result. She's been involved with the theater for many years. She has a bachelor's degree from Anderson University, where she was on the president's list, also a master's degree from the University of South Carolina, where she graduated with honors. She attends faithfully at High Praises Church in Anderson with her entire family. She was on the drama team at church, played softball and basketball youth league, and worked at a Christian daycare while in school.
In court, the focus shifts to timelines. Prosecutors describe a period of roughly 2 years. Those 2 years are presented not as isolated incidents, but as a continuous process. 2 years of gradual influence. 2 years in which contact did not disappear, but changed form. Even as circumstances shifted, the boy grows older. His life becomes more complex. He moves into higher grades. His schedule fills with new responsibilities. But the contact does not stop. It adapts. Investigators emphasize that this ability to maintain connection across changing conditions is a key indicator of consistency. Locations change. Physical distance appears. But communication continues. It shifts into formats that do not require in-person contact. To investigators, this does not look accidental. It looks intentional, a choice to maintain influence. Over time, the family begins to notice changes. Nothing dramatic, nothing sudden, but enough to create unease. He becomes more withdrawn. He speaks less about his life. He avoids direct answers. There is tension in his behavior that does not have a clear explanation. His academic performance declines. His mood shifts. These signals do not immediately form a clear picture. During adolescence, change is common. According to investigators, that ambiguity is often exploited. When behavior can be explained by age, it rarely triggers immediate concern. At a certain point, his mother intervenes. She directly addresses the need to stop the contact. She draws a boundary. Physical meetings end. For the family, it feels like resolution. There is relief. It appears the dangerous period has passed. But the contact does not disappear. It changes shape.
The Strickland family, her family adores her. Her mother there was a written statement by her mother at the Anderson bond hearing that said that she had said her mother and sister hated her. Again, that's not the case. Her mother and sister are here. Her family adores her. She also has a lot of cousins and nephews who all love her. They have special needs children in this family, Your Honor, and Ms. Callaham is always there to work with them and counsel their parents. Again, she was granted a surety bond in Anderson, and upon information and belief, we believe that Anderson County there's some conduct by Mr. Strickland that's being investigated by Anderson County at this time. Ms. Callaham has cooperated. She's given a statement regarding the warrants in Anderson, and we really only became aware of the Greenville investigation last week when I was advised by Investigator Erskine in Anderson County. So we certainly, Ms. Callaham certainly will cooperate, wants to cooperate. There's no evidence on the record of any convictions or any record of flight to avoid prosecution by the defendant. There's no evidence of failure to appear in court for other prosecutions of the defendant. And there's really no findings or evidence on the record that the defendant's release will not reasonably assure her appearance as required, or that she's an unreasonable danger to the community. I believe, Your Honor, as I believe there's been no contact in nearly a year. There's not going to be any contact in nearly a year. Well, there's not going to be any contact at all, but there's been no contact in nearly a year. And I will tell you, any contact last fall when the victim and Miss Callaham went to Ulta to pick out makeup. There's been really no contact since then, and any contact was initiated by Mr. Strickland. Now, we understand, there's been a lot of media coverage in this case. And I respect the media. I respect law enforcement. I cannot and will not try this case in the media.
No, sir, we're not going to do it in this courtroom either. They have a right to be here.
Absolutely.
But at that point, I'm not concerned with that.
Yes, sir.
I'm concerned about setting a bond.
Yes, sir. And so, Your Honor, we respectfully ask the court to set a reasonable surety bond if necessary, Your Honor. Set GPS, set house arrest if necessary. We ask the court to respectfully set a bond. Again, Miss Callaham is pregnant. She's at 8 to 9 weeks pregnant. I'm certain that the Greenville County Detention Center doesn't want to take care of a pregnant lady in her first trimester. So we ask the court to grant a reasonable surety bond with any other conditions that may apply. Again, Anderson County set a $10,000 surety bond on each charge, which is ultimately a $40,000 surety bond. We'd ask the court for a reasonable bond in this matter.
All right, sir. Where, if she is released on bond, is she going to be living?
She'll be living in Anderson County.
Well, I mean, with her parents or with her fiance?
If I can take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I need to know that.
And I advise if she's released, she will be living with her fiance, Brandon Dixon, who's here in the courtroom. He does live in Greenville County.
So she's going to be living in Greenville County?
If she lives, yes, sir. She's got an apartment in Anderson County. Her family lives in Anderson County. The victim's family lives in Anderson County. The victim lives out of state, I believe, in New York. But it's my understanding, talking to my client right now, that she can live with her fiance, and that would be in Greenville County.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Investigators later conduct a detailed analysis of digital traces, messages, devices, communication channels. A fact emerges that becomes significant in court. Alternative methods were used to maintain contact. When one channel became unavailable, another appeared. From the outside, the contact seemed to have ended. In reality, it continued. Not randomly, for 2 years, he does not speak publicly. He does not go to police. He tries to understand what happened and how to name it. Only when he turns 18 does he decide to return to the story. Not for revenge, but to give it definition. When he speaks again, his words sound different, more direct, less cautious. He is no longer focused on recounting events. He talks about consequences, about what stayed with him after the contact ended, about how the experience gradually reshaped how he saw himself and the world around him. He explains how care slowly began to feel like control. But if someone says that to my child, laws wouldn't exist for me anymore. That is pure evil. How attention that initially felt supportive turned into pressure. How boundaries eroded so gradually that he no longer understood where they were. There was no single breaking point. Everything happened, step by step. He talks about shame, not as a moment, but as a constant background. About guilt that had no clear source but lingered for years. About confusion. when it becomes difficult to identify what was wrong if it was framed as trust and concern. He speaks about effects that are not visible, about losing a sense of safety, about struggling to trust adults, about how difficult it was to reclaim a sense of normalcy after the connection ended. His words do not sound like an accusation, they sound like an explanation of why this experience cannot simply be left behind. At the same time, investigators continue gathering evidence, messages, logs, records. Each new element adds another piece to the larger picture. A picture that looks less accidental and more consistent with every step. What once appeared fragmented now forms a clear timeline.
And that I think more awareness needs to be brought to things like this, and just because I'm a man doesn't mean that it should be shunned away. Because I was a child, I wasn't a man, I was a boy, and yeah, that's pretty much what I want them to know.
And how has that affected you over the past couple of years?
It's made me come to realize that I had to grow up very, very fast and get on a whole nother maturity level that I was never ready for and shouldn't have had to been. Yeah.
And how do you move forward from today?
I think I'm really able to move forward today because seeing it in person made it feel more real, and it feels like a weight lifted off of me. And I don't really think I would have been able to move on if it weren't for the support from family and loved ones, and being able to come out about it and be comfortable talking about it and fighting for my power back and right.
I think you're incredibly brave for putting your face out here and your name and telling your story. What do you hope to be able to do that? Maybe if you can make a difference to others, or
I would love to bring a more awareness to show that this happens, and it happens a lot, and I don't really feel like it changed me. I feel that it made me, number one, grow up quicker and learn to be mature faster. I feel that if it did change me, it changed me in a way that it made me be stronger, but also more cautious, it made it difficult for me to trust people, which can be good, and people shouldn't have to do that.
After the hearings, he says that the simple fact of speaking publicly changed a great deal for him. There is a sense of relief, not because everything is over, but because silence no longer carries the same weight. Being able to speak openly gives him a sense of closure that was missing for years. As the case moves into the court phase, the ambiguity that surrounded it for so long begins to disappear. What once existed as internal doubt and fragmented memory now has form. It has dates, locations, legal language. Court does not work with emotion, it works with sequence. And that sequence begins to matter. Callaham voluntarily turned herself in to the Anderson County Detention Center on July 10, 2025, and was later transferred to Greenville County. The first hearing takes place in Anderson County. This is not just a location. It is where she built her reputation over years, where she was known, where she worked, where she was a familiar face. The defense leans heavily on this context. They remind the court of her years of service, her involvement in the community, her positive character references. They focus less on events and more on who she was before this moment. Inside the courtroom, that strategy is felt. The defense frames the situation as a sudden rupture, not an inevitable outcome. They try to return the narrative to the image of a teacher, a mentor, a community member. But the judge focuses elsewhere. Reputation matters less than sequence. The discussion of bond conditions is calm but precise. Bond conditions include house arrest unless she obtains employment, GPS monitoring, a psychological evaluation, and a 1-mile exclusion zone around the victim's family residence. Restrictions become clearer, more stringent. This is not a verdict, but it is no longer a formality. The court signals that it takes the matter seriously. After the conditions are announced, a strange pause follows. Formally, the case continues. Emotionally, it enters a new phase. What once existed only in investigative files is now public. She does not return to the work she did for years. She does not appear in classrooms. She is no longer part of theater programs. Her name no longer functions as a reference. It becomes part of a criminal case people are watching closely. For the community, this is a shock. Not because of headlines, but because of the collision of two images. The person they knew and the image emerging from documents, testimony, and timelines. The defense continues to emphasize the presumption of innocence. The case is far from over, but public perception has already shifted. After bond conditions are set, the case enters a phase that is difficult to describe as active, but impossible to call quiet. Her bond in Anderson County was set at $40,000. Her bond in Greenville County was set at $120,000, with $10,000 surety per charge. Formally, the process continues. Documents move between offices, attorneys prepare motions, investigators review materials, but for everyone involved, a different stage begins, one defined by waiting and reassessment. Nicole Callaham does not return to the work she did for years. She does not walk school hallways. She does not participate in theater programs. She is no longer present in the spaces where she was once a familiar part of daily life, and that absence becomes noticeable. For the Anderson County community, this creates a slow rupture. Not sudden, not dramatic, but persistent. People who knew her for years attempt to reconcile their memories with what is now described in courtrooms and news reports. Often, those images do not align. The image of a dedicated teacher is difficult to merge with that of a criminal defendant. That is the hard lesson here. We want monsters to look like monsters, but usually, they look just like the nice lady who teaches your kid how to sing. At the same time, internal reviews begin. Educational authorities examine her professional status. Her teaching license was suspended by the South Carolina State Board of Education on July 31, 2025. Pending a due process hearing. Investigators do not close the case. Instead, they continue analyzing materials. Digital evidence gathered early is reviewed again. Messages are reread in sequence. Logs are matched against timelines. Every detail is examined for consistency. Particular attention is given to the possibility of additional incidents. This is not a conclusion, it is a direction of inquiry. But even the possibility affects how the case is viewed. The defense maintains its position. They argue exaggeration, interpretation. They emphasize that not every interaction constitutes a crime. They remind the court of the presumption of innocence and that no final judgment has been reached. Formally, those arguments remain valid. But they now exist in a space where the victim's story has been publicly told and closely watched. For the boy, this process is not a victory. He does not speak in terms of winning. He does not frame it as revenge. His focus is elsewhere. On closing a chapter, on no longer carrying the experience in silence, on the relief that comes from naming it. He does not know how the case will end legally. He does not predict the outcome, but he knows that the story is no longer contained within him. It has shape, it has sequence, it has language. Public reaction extends beyond this single case. Organizations working with survivors report an increase in outreach, particularly from boys and young men who had previously remained silent, not because they lacked experiences, but because they doubted they would be taken seriously. The case becomes a signal, not a legal precedent, but a social one, and that gradual progression is often what makes it invisible. This case cannot be reduced to one hearing or one headline. It is built from decisions made over years, from boundaries slowly eroded, from silence that lasted longer than it should have. At this stage, Nicole Callaham remains out on bond. That is not a misunderstanding. How the hell did nobody see this happening for 2 years? The investigation continues. Additional counts have not been ruled out. There is an ongoing investigation by the Clemson Police Department, which may lead to additional charges. The story is now part of a past that no longer remains silent. He does not know how the legal process will end, but he knows he told the truth, and that it no longer belongs only to him. This story shows us that the scariest predators do not hide in the shadows. They stand at the front of the classroom with a smile. Now, tell us honestly. The Bible warns us, beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. And this story proves it. Take this as a warning. Never let a title or a reputation blind you to reality, because when you ignore your instincts to protect a predator, you allow the sheep to be devoured. Now, look at the screen. If this story touched you, I think the videos you see now will truly resonate. They connected with so many of you. Honestly, I really hope you come back to this channel. I pour my heart and soul into every single video, spending countless hours just to make it worth your time. I even appreciate the constructive criticism, because that is how we grow. So please, subscribe and like if you want to support us. But if you are tired and need to step away, I understand perfectly. Just know that I love you guys, and I will be waiting for you right here whenever you are ready.